The question of who fired the first shot is now the subject of a fierce war of words between Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, and Moscow. Tbilisi insists that Moscow had been deliberately building up its military strength in South Ossetia and encouraging its Ossetian allies to provoke Georgia for a long time.
We have hardcore evidence, clear evidence that Russians invaded not only a few days before it all started, but they've been there for months and years and provoking and initiating hostilities before that, committing clear illegal acts. So, you know, we have interest in having transparency.
But the crucial issue is what happened on the first day of the war, August the 7th. I'm being taken now to a top-secret monitoring centre to meet the operative who Georgia says obtained the proof that Russia began the war that day. And Huel, name's Sturdy and Huel.
Sturdy and Huel.
We're being...
Sturdy and Huel.
It's the tape of a phone call he intercepted between Ossetian border guards, confirming that a Russian armoured column had passed through the tunnel from Russia onto Georgian sovereign territory. The call was made, the Georgians say, at 3:25 a.m. on the 7th, some 20 hours before they attacked South Ossetia. In the Georgian Interior Ministry, a senior official played me the recording. But despite this apparent evidence, Georgia didn't mention any Russian invasion when it went to war at the end of that day, the 7th. It didn't mention any proof until weeks later, because it says now it mislaid the tape. So even though this tape was so important as evidence of Russia's actions, you actually lost it for a month?
Well, we never lost it actually, because it was in the files. But we had about 6,000 intercepts of the same kind.
But this was a crucial one.
This was crucial.
So even one so important to your case, you didn't keep it separately?
No, and that was a mistake.
Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, isn't convinced.
This tape is nonsense and it is a lie. Look, NATO and the United States, with all the satellites monitoring this area very, very closely, how can they not know the truth? They know it, and we know that they know it.
Russia claims its army first crossed the border at the Rocky Tunnel on August the 8th, the day after the Georgian attack on Tskhinvali. I arrived by the same route, the first Western journalist since the war to be given unrestricted access to South Ossetia. If Georgia were right about the timing, Russian troops would have poured down this road from the 7th of August onwards. But our driver Alan Parastayev, an Ossetian who came this way on the morning of the 8th, says he saw no troops at all.
That's why the panic was in South Ossetia and in Tskhinvali as well. And even some of the authorities said that the Russians betrayed us and they don't want to help us anymore.
Meanwhile, the Georgians arrived triumphantly in Tskhinvali that morning, confident of victory, filming themselves for the benefit of family and friends back home. But the local people who gave us these videos told us with morbid glee that they came from the mobiles of the dead. Georgians were opposed and killed, not by Russians, but by Ossetian volunteers, men like this local businessman, Timur Tkhovrebov. He and some friends lay in wait for the first Georgian tanks as they arrived on a hillside above Tskhinvali on the morning of the 8th.
We let them through down to there. They drove past and didn't see us. There were 4 of us. We had 1 heavy machine gun and 3 Kalashnikovs.
Later, he says, younger Ossetian paramilitaries joined the fight too.
The lads turned into film stars who realised that tanks are just metal boxes. We had 30 people, each one ready to knock out at least 1 tank. That's a lot.
The top of this Georgian tank was blown off, not by Russians, but by local Ossetian volunteers. The Russians don't seem to have been in the town for most of the time that it was occupied by Georgians. Indeed, according to everyone we've spoken to here, the main body of Russian forces didn't arrive for more than 2 days after the initial Georgian attack. Far from having carefully planned their invasion, as Georgia has suggested, it seems the Russians had to scramble to get organised. Their intelligence was so poor that when they finally approached Tskhinvali on the 9th of August, their advance column drove straight into a Georgian ambush, a defeat witnessed by a Russian reporter who was himself wounded.
A Georgian ran up. I was dressed in black jeans, an ordinary green jumper with a hood. And I said to him, "We're journalists." He shouted back, "We're killers," and fired a grenade. Only 5 armoured vehicles got away. The rest of the column was wiped out, and there were a lot of wounded, including the army commander, General Khrulyov. From a military point of view, the commander of an army has no business in an advanced column coming to storm a town.
But journalists weren't the only non-military target hit that day. It's alleged that the Georgians continued firing, intentionally or not, on ordinary civilians.
It's destroyed. Look at the shells they used. Clearly not machine gun. Look, they were large shells.
Видите, от какого крупнокалиберного они стреляли.
This was Marina Kochyeva's car. She alleges it was hit repeatedly by Georgian tank fire as she tried to flee Tskhinvali on the night of August the 9th. They crashed into a ditch, but the firing didn't stop.
My fellow passenger covered me with his body and he was hit. If he hadn't been hit, the bullet would have been for me.
You were driving fast and it was night time. Maybe they simply thought that you were fighters.
Знаете, как я хочу сказать, боевики идут туда,
Fighters go towards the fighting, and we were escaping. They knew that this road is a bypass and leads to the north. So they were lying in wait for people like me, people who were frightened, who were weak, who were fleeing the fighting. They didn't allow us that. Only thanks to God's help did we survive. But lots died on this road.
Ossetians wounded in the war were patched up in a makeshift underground hospital. The international investigative organisation Human Rights Watch now accuses Georgia of indiscriminate use of force in Tskhinvali, a violation of the Geneva Conventions. It believes it may also be guilty of deliberate targeting of civilians, a serious war crime.